So, Jennifer Opal is a multi-award-winning DevOps engineer and founder of the company Data But Make It Human. She is a technologist, writer, keynote speaker, student, and neurodiversity and inclusion advocate. Data But Make It Human is a company that has a mission to humanize the tech industry by harnessing data insights to drive neurodiversity, inclusion, and equity. Jennifer also created the Opal Blog, a platform that has gained recognition for its human stories on her experience of being a Black neurodivergent woman in the technology industry, as well as mental health. Jennifer has won and been nominated for various awards, and in 2020 won the Rising Star Award at the Black Tech Achievement Awards. Jennifer is a passionate advocate for education, awareness of diversity and inclusion, using her various platforms to talk about issues affecting the neurodivergent community, as well as LGBTQ+ issues and racial equality. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. That was such a major intro. Thank you.
Well, it's impressive. I mean, I'm always so thankful to TikTok in a way, because I came across you on TikTok first of all, and it's yeah, it's so I just loved your videos, and I loved your passion and excitement for tech and encouraging people into tech. And so there's so many things that I want to talk about, but I was like, the first time I saw your video, I was like, I need to get you on the podcast. So I'm so grateful you said yes.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I remember you just literally wrote those exact words, and I'm like, reach out to me, let's do it. Like, I'm absolutely open to it. But thank you.
Oh, amazing. Well, let's start with passion. So there's a lot in that description that clearly you're passionate about. So what are you passionate about? And obviously it can be more than one thing, but what really kind of lights your fire?
Oh gosh, I think the biggest passion for me is first fighting for the invisible to be seen. I think that's like the biggest passion for me that has developed since getting into the tech industry, especially. And I think that as a Black woman, and as someone that is neurodivergent, and someone that is also queer and identifies as a lesbian as well, I think that I really want to make sure that I'm always open and transparent about who I am. I think we live in a world where we, unfortunately, we experience so many challenges, and we experience so much discrimination for various different things. But I think that I've been able to have the career that I have because I've chosen to, despite how scary it is, honestly, to be so yourself. I am also aware that there are people that see me and see themselves, whether they be in the tech industry or not. So I think that for me, that's the biggest passion that's like the biggest passion for me. And I think after that would be tech and mostly just data and information. Like I think it's just a really, it might just be an autistic special interest or something like that. I just developed and picked up, but I've always been fascinated by information and facts and data and how that's used. So I would say that that's the second passion for me. And it doesn't have to be specifically data related to tech related things, but I just love absorbing information and just learning new things. So those are the two big passions for me.
Yeah, I love that. So and that's definitely something that comes across in your TikTok, but social media, is your openness and wanting to help other people into tech, open the doors. You're deliberately not gatekeeping any of the sort of information that sort of allowed you your journey, I suppose.
Oh, absolutely. Because when I got into the tech industry, I started my career as through the program from Code First Girls, and they do a intro to web development, and it's a free course for women and non-binaries. And I got into that program, but it was a free program for me. Then I got into another program with Code First Girls, which got me my first job at a major telecommunications company here in the UK. That was also a free program. So for me personally, I find that these programs were created by people of color, by marginalized groups, for me to be able to get into this space. And yes, I did the work 100%. You have to do the work to be able to get into this space. You're not just expecting them to hold your hand throughout, like to learn everything. But they created this opportunity for me to get in. So for me, it always felt quite hypocritical and uncomfortable for me to shut the door or charge people at the door to get into a space where I got into for free, because someone else took the time to create a program and an opportunity for me to get in. And I want to transform my life and transform the lives of my family and the people that I love around me. So I think for me, I've always been that person where I'm like, I want to continue to hold the door open, but I'll also express when I'm getting overwhelmed. I also express when my mental health is a bit too much, or I'm not going to be able to reply to you straight away. It might take me a while. It might take me a few months. I love that the community that I've created around me have been very understanding of that. And I think that's really helped kind of drive me in my career and continue to advocate, even if it does feel small in some ways. I still find that I still feel like I'm making bigger impacts, because if someone has seen it, or if someone has noticed it, then I'm doing something right. I'm making a change somewhere. And that's what kind of continues to drive me.
Yeah, fantastic. And so your arrival, your journey into tech it sounds like it was quite a sort of a quick, swift journey. But you were in engineering before, is that right?
Yeah, so my career journey was so random. So I started, before I got into the tech industry, I was studying, I was training to become a psychodynamic therapist.
Were you?
I know.
Interesting. Okay.
I was volunteering and working with young adults at the Brent Council, and also at the Brentford Community Sports Trust. So I was part of like a program and leading a program that was helping young adults there from struggling backgrounds. So that was my way of getting experience of working with young adults, because I wanted to become a psychodynamic therapist that worked with young adults and young children. But then after studying counseling, I realized that I'm the one that needed therapy, and I had no business being a therapist to anybody, especially someone else's child. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of trauma here. I cannot. So I had to kind of step away from that, and I graduated, and it was great, and I got an offer from Goldsmiths to study my master's in counseling, and I turned it down, and I was like, I love counseling, I love working with young adults, but this isn't it for me. So I just went to university and was like, what's an easy course for me to get into so I can figure out what the next step is? And I just decided to go for business and French language. And then in my second year, Code First Girls came to my university. I applied for their intro courses they were offering to students for free. And it was intro to web development once a week for 8 weeks. And it completely just opened my mind to just how creative this skill was. And as a child growing up, I didn't have engineers around me or doctors or anything like that. My family, bus drivers, truck drivers, deliveries, they were very working class. So I never saw doctors and engineers. And I didn't really, although, my mom very much encouraged and said, yeah, like, that's possible for you. But I think it's different when they say it from when you actually see it. But I didn't know that was an option for myself. So when I finished that program, the following year, Code First Girls launched what was then known as the further program, but is now known as the Code First Girls degree. And I got onto that program. So I was part of the first cohort, finished the program. It was like a 3-month program long. And from completing the program, you got the opportunity to do interviews for jobs at a telecommunications company in the UK. And I got through to the interview rounds. I got the job offer, and they said, what do you want to do? Because if you take this job, you're going to have to leave London and move to Belfast, to Northern Ireland. And I'm like, whoa, I guess I'm moving. So I decided to just take the plunge, and I dropped out of university, and I left, and I moved to Belfast, and I've been here since. And when I got here, I realized that I was the only Black woman working for the company, and it was a head office of about 600, 500 people. And then came to realize I was the only Black person. There was nobody else. And I think after a while, and I called it out to the CTO's attention when they came to visit for an all hands. And he admittedly said he didn't even think of that. And we had a conversation, because I asked him, like, why am I the only Black person here? Especially if we've come through a program that's supposed to increase diversity, why am I the only one here? But I like the fact that he was transparent and said that he didn't think about it, and we had a conversation, and I continued to advocate, but it became exhausting. But I think using my voice on LinkedIn and Twitter and things like that, but it was great. Like, I think, like, once I started the advocacy journey, it just didn't stop. And I didn't see myself as an advocate. I just saw myself as someone sharing my experience, honestly. And all the opportunities just kind of flowed from there.
Yeah. It's amazing the doors that open, I suppose, when you open, you're open to the possibility of change or something different. You know, you started off on one path, and then it changed again, and now you're there. But I think that's a really interesting point about advocacy and the exhaustion of advocacy, or the, you know, you've got your job to do as well alongside, you know, trying to change the world, you know, even if it's just your corner of the world for the better. How are you kind of, I guess, how are you taking care of your mental health in all of that?
I think for me, over the years, I've had to step away from thinking about the numbers on things, or comparing myself to other people in their advocacy. I think that, like, sometimes I would become so focused on, oh my gosh, I don't have as many followers of this person, I don't have as many views as this person, or this person is now doing a book, or this person is now got like 100,000 on their blog and things like that. But I think for me, I have focused on the fact that when I have a platform and I use my platform for good and I share my experience and I'm transparent, even if one person has seen it, I've done something good. And you never know who that person could be. And I can only hope that from my transparency, it also helps that person. But stepping away from thinking about the numbers has really helped me 100%. The second thing that I would say is I don't follow people or engage with people that are constantly talking about having to be consistent all the time. I have ADHD. I take medication for my ADHD. I'm autistic. I have dyslexia and dyspraxia. I have a full-time job. You're not going to get consistency out of me. Like, you're just not going to do that. And I had to kind of think about what consistency looks like to me. And for me, it's the fact that I'm doing something rather than nothing shows that I'm being consistent. And I think that from doing that, I've been able to kind of go to sleep and just be restful. I'm not thinking about, oh my gosh, like, there's this comment, there's that message, there's this view, there's this tweet. Maybe I should do this, maybe I should talk about this because everyone else is talking about it. No. It's not healthy. It's not. If you're getting to a point where you are constantly doing that and it becomes your entire world, that everything else comes second, including your mental health, you're going to crack at some point. And I've cracked before, and I refuse to ever be in that situation again. And I'll say the last thing that I do to prioritize my mental health is when it comes to looking for jobs. I've gotten to a point where I can't really hide the fact that I am neurodivergent. I've advocated for it so much.
Yes.
So when it comes to the interviews, they may not necessarily be familiar with my platform, but I know that a simple Google or something, and they will probably find out that I'm neurodivergent. I am very open about it in my interviews now. So I'll just say, if they say, oh, do you have any questions? Yes. So I have that. Do you have accommodations? And how does that work? How does it look like? What can I ask for? Can I ask for flexibility? Things like that. And I think that has protected me from working in some unhealthy working environments. I think from the first company that I worked for, I ended up in therapy at the end of my journey with them. And I was in therapy for 4 months, recovering from the impact of my mental health there.
Mm.
And then having that on top of the isolation and the loneliness of being the only one in a work environment like that, it takes a toll so much. You're burying and burying and burying. At some point, you're going to have to face what you've actually buried. But for me, once I faced it, I was like, I can't be here anymore.
Yeah.
So I've been lucky enough that since then, I've kind of been able to trust my intuition and trust my gut with things, that I can spot when something just isn't right about an organization during the interview process, and I have no issue in pulling out of a job application journey if I feel like something isn't right.
Mm.
So yeah, those are the 3 things I would say.
Yeah, amazing. And I think I really hear you talking there about I suppose the only way you can really advocate for yourself is by really knowing yourself and knowing your needs, knowing who you are. And so I think, yeah, let's talk about the neurodivergence for a minute, because you're absolutely right. Like we often get assimilated into a neurotypical kind of way of being and world, and it can take a little while to extract ourselves out of that once we know more about ourselves.
Yeah.
I love your on your auto reply on your email, you talk, clearly there about I'm neurodivergent, I'm dyslexic, this might mean that I take a few days to get back to you. If I don't reply, give me a nudge. And so I love it when I see people really kind of claiming what they need from everyone. What can you talk a little bit about your sort of the barriers that you've had to I guess maybe even education, but just sort of progress in general? Yeah, have you always known that you're neurodivergent? Has that come later? A little bit about that journey.
Sure. When it comes to the barriers, I think it's something that impacts a lot of women and Black women, especially. We get diagnosed later on in life. I knew from when I would say probably primary school. So I must have been maybe like 5, no, I would have been maybe 7 or 8. I don't know how I came to learn about dyslexia, but it was just a word that I just had in my head, where it's like I knew that was me. It just wasn't spotted in school. I was always described as someone that was quite bright and very smart and intelligent and things like that. And that's great. But I think that when it came to things like solving a math equation, and I knew the answer, and I remember writing it down and then getting the answer wrong because I didn't write it down, but I answered it in my head. It was just like, but I wrote the answer, like I know what the answer is. And the teacher would be like, oh, don't worry, people make mistakes all the time. And in my head, I'm like, but that wasn't a mistake. Like I know I wrote the answer. But I guess it's a difference between answering it in your head and actually writing it down. But things happen, and I moved on from it. But I think that I started to accommodate myself when high school started to hit in. So when it came to passing my exams, once the teachers told me the themes to expect from the exams, I started memorizing facts and information for those themes, which helped me to pass my exams. So it'll just be a question of repeating things so it stays in my head. But once that exam was done, you couldn't ask me about questions that came up in that exam. I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't have no idea. And I still don't even remember much about my high school exams and my GCSEs. But I didn't realize until much later on in life that I really accommodated myself a lot in ways that I didn't know. It didn't help as well that I was also bullied in high school, but I isolated myself a lot. So every lunchtime, I ended up creating a routine. Every lunchtime, I would go to the music club. and I would be on the piano all the time, figuring out how to play something that I really enjoyed, and have my headphones in. I'm in my little corner and no one can see me. Like I created ways for me to kind of wind down from being so overwhelmed from having to be around so many people, then kind of to isolate myself, kind of self-soothe and have a creative outlet. I created a structure, a routine for myself, not realizing that that was also something that was also connected to my autism, and I wasn't diagnosed at the time. So fast forward to university, and this was just after the first intro coding course that I did with Code First Girls. I was diagnosed with ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia in March 2018. I was 27 at the time. So when that happened, I was like, okay, dyslexia I was expecting, because you give me a book that has the tiniest bit of writing and it literally feels like they're all crawling all over me. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. It felt incredibly overwhelming, anxiety inducing, and I'd be so hard on myself that I simply just couldn't read all of a sudden. Then I was like, okay, well, dyslexia, I know what that is. Dyspraxia, I had to kind of figure out, and I'm still trying to learn and understand what that is. And ADHD, same thing, still trying to learn and understand how that looks like for me. Because I've gone 27 years without knowing officially. So I've got 27 years to catch up on of getting to know these things. Then when I found out I was autistic, it was actually earlier this year in February. And I went into therapy. I wasn't looking for a diagnosis. I was looking for a therapist. And this was just after, like, about a year after I came out, and I wanted to go into therapy. And being in a relationship as well, in a queer relationship, I wanted to just get some advice. I wanted to get some understanding, and I wanted to do some unpacking for myself too. The first session, the therapist asks me, like, has anyone ever asked you if you're autistic? And I'm like, no. But I've had that in the back of my mind, but I was like, oh, maybe I'm just, like, there's so many overlaps with neurodiverse, with being neurodivergent. I just didn't want it to be me trying to diagnose myself or something, or trying to kind of say, oh yeah, this is me as well. Because I know that people tend to use social media a lot to diagnose themselves. And I guess it can be fine when it's fine when you're starting on that path to kind of learning more about yourself. But I didn't want to do that for me. I was like, yeah, I've already got ADHD, dyslexia, and dyspraxia. That's more than enough. Let me figure that out first. Let me not try and diagnose myself with something else. When I found out I was autistic, it felt like it made sense in terms of the questions that they were asking me. And then I was like, but that also, and I was trying to tell myself, well, but it could be ADHD as well. Like, maybe you're just wrong and things like that. And I was trying to kind of dismissing it in my head. But no, like, it started to resonate more and more, and I started to believe it before she even gave me the full result. So yeah, and then I was diagnosed earlier this year at the age of 32 that I am autistic. So I think that I feel like if you're not a young white boy, you're likely to get diagnosed much later in life. That's just what research is out there. They haven't really studied. There's not a lot of studies on ADHD and autism in young girls, as well as dyslexia and dyspraxia. I don't think there's a lot of research on that in young girls, let alone in Black people and people of color as well. So we tend to get diagnosed much later on in life. And we live in a society that tells us we have to act a certain way. So we now have also learned that we've had to mask for all these years because society tells us to. So then once we get to the diagnosis, it's like, are you telling me that I've been hiding all of this? So I can actually kind of remove those masks in some way. But yeah, like, it was quite a journey. I think the autism came as a surprise. The dyslexia didn't, but everything else did.
Yeah, I think diagnosis is self-diagnosis is also valid, but there is something that I've found particularly validating about the diagnosis process, which I find frustrating. You know, I find it frustrating that it takes that to sort of sometimes make you feel like, you know, there is a legitimate reason. Someone else has said that there is a reason why things have been difficult, or, you know, you're different. You're just different from neurotypicals?
100%. Like I think that the waiting list as well, like so many people have been waiting for an ADHD diagnosis for so long, and I think that the waiting list, last I checked, is about 2 years now, just to even get to the stage of having an assessment. And it's ridiculous. It shouldn't be taking this long. And I know that a lot of people are having to resort to going to get diagnosed privately, but then even getting diagnosed privately, because of the demand, they're now bumping up the prices, which means that there's now an inaccessible resource for people to get diagnosed and to kind of figure out, okay, what resources do I need and how can I protect myself in the workplace from discrimination? Because I need that diagnosis to protect myself in the workplace, you know? So there's so many reasons why getting an official diagnosis is so important, but the barriers in place to get that, self-diagnosis absolutely is valid. People need answers, and they find answers from reaching out to the community, from listening to professionals that are openly talking about it. I've had people look at like me talking about ADHD and how it looks like for me, and it's now encouraged them to get a diagnosis because they're like, this has literally been my life. And I even had someone once message me, say that they got diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 54. And I was just like, whoa, you should not have had to wait so long, but you should have known so much sooner. And I think like it's such a shame that it's taking this long, but I can only hope that things just improve and get better and better to a point where it is accessible for everybody, even the marginalized and even those that are low income as well. Like, it should be something that anyone can just get access to.
Yeah, good point. So if we were to talk about purpose, do you feel like your purpose is different to your passion? I think it's always really an interesting conversation to talk about purpose, because it's a word we don't tend to think about very often. But yeah, what would you say your purpose is, if you have one at all?
So it's interesting. I feel like my purpose is to make a difference. And I know it sounds so strange, like saying it, and it seems so simple. But I think that the work that I've done, the work that I've done and been a part of, and the spaces that I've been invited into, has actually like helped me to see that there's purpose aligned in everything that I'm doing. And I think it's leading to me making an impact and a difference in a way that helps other marginalized groups, but neurodivergent people, those that are queer and neurodivergent. But I think the key pinnacle is for those that are neurodivergent. And I think that because I find that although I don't have like, you know, hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok or whatever, so on TikTok, I think is like under 8,000 followers. But even with under 8,000 followers on TikTok, I've been invited to speak at Tech Show London about AI and neurodiversity. I've been invited to speak at HackerJob conference, the HackerJob DevLab conferences, and the most recent one earlier this year was held at the Sky head office in London. I've been invited into those spaces to talk about my tech journey and talk about being neurodivergent in tech. Then being invited to talk about AI and neurodiversity in Forbes, of all places. Like, never would I have imagined that would be something that I would be doing. And then winning awards along the side of that. There's so many spaces that I've been invited into, and they said, okay, you're in this space. Speak, say what you want to say what difference you want to change, what work do you want to do. And I think that's where I feel like whenever I get off a stage or get off posting a TikTok or posting a tweet and it resonates with people, even just like something as simple as just referring somebody that's neurodivergent to get a job somewhere, and or job interview even, there's so much power in that. It really just brings joy to me, and I think that's where my purpose lies, is keeping the door open and making a difference and making an impact for neurodivergent people, because these opportunities don't come from seeking followers. I think these opportunities come from when you are authentic within yourself, and you allow the message to speak. So I feel like for me, allowing my message to speak, and my message has literally been my story, just my journey, my life story is my message. And there are other people that have the same journey as me or similar and resonate. And it's like, I want to get to a point where in a few years, I can apply for a job and there's going to be other people there that look like me. Like, I'm going to like have the opportunity to work with an engineer, another programmer that's also a Black woman, that's also Black and queer or neurodivergent. And I'm lucky enough that I had the chance to work with neurodivergent people in my previous team when I was working at Dropbox as a DevOps engineer. It was an amazing, amazing team. And I loved working with neurodivergent people. And everyone was so transparent and open about being neurodivergent and open about their mental health, and open when they needed to just kind of step away and take a day because they were feeling overwhelmed. It was just a normal thing. I want to see that so much more. And I want to be able to see more teams like that. And I want to be able to see other people also be inspired by my work and continue doing it, you know, so that they see the change that they need to see. So I feel like that's where my purpose lies. It's something that I fell into, but it's something that I feel like I may have fallen into it, but it feels like it found me for a reason.
Yeah.
I just continue to push with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that description. It sort of sounds like you've fallen into a career. Sounds a bit like you had nothing to do with it, but you ended up in a career that has then really ignited a passion within you for education, advocacy, you know, that and that sort of led to your purpose, which has led, I guess, to you feeling fulfilled. I hear you kind of being, you know, proud of the fact that this is what you're doing, and it and I guess there's some level of fulfillment in that.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's also really helped my mental health too. Because when I started to focus on the followers and the amount and the views and getting like opportunities like everybody else, and comparing, like the comparison, that's the one I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for. The comparison to other creators and other advocates. I realized that I was doing myself a disservice. I think that the saying goes that comparison is the thief of joy. I'm not really sure who said that, but it really is. And it's definitely the thief of your mental health too. And your happiness, because you lose the joy. Like, it doesn't become something that you want to do. Sometimes it turns into a chore when you focus on things that are very materialistic when it comes to your advocacy journey and the impact that you're trying to make. Like, what is the reason why you're doing what you're doing? But I think that that has really doing that and allowing myself to just kind of say, do you know what? I'm just going to speak and share my thoughts and be myself. And whatever happens, happens. And I hope it speaks to somebody. And most of the time it actually does. And I feel so amazing, because then I have videos and blogs or YouTube videos or tweets where people are like, Jennifer was one of the first Black people that I saw getting into the tech industry and talking about it. There was many of us that were talking about it back then. But I on Instagram, I had less than like 3,000 followers. But me sharing my story, someone saw it. And then that one person can now inspire other people and inspire other people and inspire other people. Like, that's what purpose is. It's not necessarily focusing on yourself as the person, as an individual. It's about focusing on what comes after that. What's the impact you want after that? And I think and for me, that's what really drives me. Because even getting a message where someone says, oh my gosh, like, I got into tech because of you. And I'm just like, wow. Like, I never really imagined that someone would be able to Like, I never thought that my tweet or me just talking about having ADHD or talking about being a late diagnosed autistic, however it might be, I didn't think that it would have that much of an impact. But someone saw it and it made a difference for their lives. And then the impact continues. And I think that's what impact should be. That's what your purpose should be. That's what should drive you. So that's what drives me.
Yeah. Which kind of leads me nicely on to the power question, because I found it really fascinating asking particularly women, when do you feel most powerful? Because we don't tend to get encouraged to be powerful people. We sometimes think about or hear about, empowering women, but I think there's a difference between asking, maybe what empowers you and when do you feel powerful. There's quite it's challenging people to kind of really think about, I'm allowed to be powerful. And so what makes you feel powerful?
Oh, I think for me, what makes me feel powerful, it might sound strange. I feel like many of my answers always sound strange, probably not. But I think what makes me feel powerful is rest. And I say that because I think that as a woman, for myself, I have lived a life, and I think for many women, especially like for myself as an eldest daughter, I'm an eldest daughter and an only daughter. We are conditioned, whether knowingly or not, we are conditioned to put everybody else first. Family, whether it be friends, whatever it might be, that carries on into your adult life. Even for myself, from a personal perspective, when it comes to asking for gifts, or even like my partner will be like, babe, what do you want for Christmas? Like, what do you want for your birthday? And I'm just like, I don't know. And then they're just like, you're not really, like, I want to be able to give you something, but you're not good at asking for things. And I'm like, but I've never been, and I look back and I'm like, I've never really been like given the opportunity in this space to kind of think about what I like. I've always been so good at giving to others and giving and giving and giving. I don't know how to give to myself. So I feel most powerful when I give to myself and rest. When I turn on the do not disturb, when I allow myself to just walk around in my dressing robe and take my makeup off and eat whatever I want to eat or whatever, but having that time of rest is me being selfish and giving myself permission to be selfish, because I think that many of us were taught that being selfish is wrong. But when you are selfish and you're putting yourself first, that is such a powerful thing for me. And I think that has really allowed me to take power over myself and in learning to be selfish in ways that will make me happy, where I don't have to give to others. I don't have to worry about other people or anyone else. I just have to worry about myself. And it's not to say that I don't feel powerful when I'm giving to other people. I love giving to other people. I love giving gifts. I love putting thoughts into gifts. I love giving people my time. I love giving people space. But I think that I sometimes can give too much, where I struggle to sometimes say no. And I overthink saying no to things. But when I do say no and I get a response like, okay, well, that's okay, maybe another time, I'm just like, oh my God, such a relief. I was overthinking this so much. I was so scared. I was overthinking. I was worried about what you think of me. I'm worried about you think that I'm this or a bad person or mean. But it always feels so good when you do prioritize yourself. And I think that rest has really been something that I've actually had to teach myself how to do and learn how to do. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
I love that answer. I love, because, what you've talked about is, following your passion, finding purpose in advocacy and education around neurodivergence and all of those kinds of things. You've talked about like it being really amazing when someone contacts you and says, you've really inspired me and I'm going to go into tech because of this. And to know that the thing that makes you feel powerful is rest, and actually putting yourself first. You've learned how to know your needs, know what you want. You want to just be able to be yourself. And so I think that that's such a lovely example of there's power in what you do in terms of power being energy, movement. You are moving people, you're moving ideas, and what's the word I'm looking for? You are transforming an industry. You not just solely responsible for that, but you are, definitely transforming a lot of things. But so to know that your power also lies in rest is just so exciting to hear. I love that.
Yeah, I think that if you'd have asked me a few years ago, the answer probably would have been very different. I think I probably would have said that I feel powerful on stage, or I feel powerful when I'm, sitting in a board meeting, but or when I finish something at work. But I think that I've had to really ask myself that question quite a lot over the years, and I think that sometimes we tend to tie our power to doing things.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that we're doing is more so necessarily sometimes can be for other people, or for it to be seen by other people. That's when we feel the most powerful. But you can feel powerful and you're the only one in the room. You can feel powerful when you're alone. And it took me a while to learn that. And I think that me learning that has given me so much self-confidence. I think not just in my career journey, but also in terms of my creativity, in terms of my self-love, in terms of being able to love others, loving my siblings, my family, my future family-in-law, my partner, like being able to, like I give to them and I also receive from them. But I think that just giving to myself has allowed me to learn how to love others and hear others and listen to others in ways that are truly just beautiful and authentic and special. And it's also allowed me to kind of do a lot of deep work and kind of like unlearning some things. And I think that, especially when you come out as queer, you're also asking yourself a lot of questions as you're in that journey too. And I'm going to spend, like, I came out at 30. I came out 3 years ago. So I was 30 when I came out publicly, but I came out to myself in my mid-20s. But I think that, like, when it comes to what am I trying to say? I think when it comes to that time of feeling powerful in rest, it's allowed me to also feel powerful in loving myself as I'm evolving and creating that space for myself to see how much I'm evolving and how much I'm growing, and to ask myself questions. Because when you're surrounded by noise, when are you going to have the time to really ask yourself those questions? And I think that's why also the pandemic was so monumental for a lot of people. They had no choice but to stop. They had no choice but to literally sit and rest and literally listen in, although that there was so much happening, but they had no choice but to sit with their internal thoughts. And that's why that season was such a pinnacle season for pretty much everyone across the world. And I came out of that and I just felt so, although I caught COVID as well, I'm so glad I recovered from that. But I think that there was a lot of time for me to really dig deep for me. And I'm glad that I had that season. So I'm intentional to just love being powerful in rest. I think that's something that I think we should normalize that a lot more.
Yeah, gosh, absolutely. I think at the time of the pandemic, I was working for a company who helped trans people access hormones privately, and I would hear it time and time again in their stories of the pandemic was really instrumental in me being able to go, okay, I've had to stop everything that normally keeps us very busy, and therefore we end up on a track that perhaps is not the right one for us. I think the whole conversation today has been around being authentic and you're absolutely right, having rest, having time to really think about what you need allows the next bit of the journey. I guess that's how you figure out what's next.
100%, 100%. I no longer allow people to guilt trip me in what I can and can't. I can't, because I think that we society has kind of set expectations of how we should live our lives, and a lot of the lives that they want us to live is to make them comfortable, and it also sets a standard that many of us just can't meet in some ways too. Like I will never be able to, if I need to take medication for my ADHD, I will never navigate this world like someone who doesn't have that. It's just how it is. I'm going to struggle in keeping a routine. My ADHD is literally battle with my autism to have a routine in place. I'm going to have those days where my routine is just not going to happen. And that's okay. What can I do instead for the rest of the day? What can I do the next day? But for a neurotypical person, they can probably have a routine and just go on about it. And they might not necessarily experience that guilt of not being able to wake up when the alarm said that they should wake up. I have tremendous amounts of guilt sometimes when I don't follow my routine. But I've had to really kind of talk to myself out loud and say, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. This is just how your brain is. It's okay. And trying to be more loving on myself, trying to be more, trying to embrace myself and be more forgiving of myself. My brain is the way that it is. I was born with the brain that I have. I can't change that. There's no operation. There's no treatment. There's nothing. I just have to learn how to navigate it. But just because I have the accommodations to be able to learn how to navigate life as a neurodivergent person in a fast-paced industry like tech, as well as trying to advocate for change in that fast-paced industry, I have to give myself grace. Like, you have to give yourself grace. The accommodations also doesn't take away the fact that I am very much still disabled. It doesn't change that. I can have all the support that I need. I'm still disabled. I can take my glasses off. I still can't see, and I have a prescription. Okay, I need them. I can still see. I just can't see clearly. It doesn't take away the fact that I need them. It doesn't take away the fact that the condition, like my existence and the things that I need to navigate life is still very much there. But yeah, living in a world where sometimes this is not a lot of understanding, it's hard and it's exhausting. So for me, rest is important. Advocating in your own way is important. It doesn't matter about the numbers. Not comparing yourself to other people is so pinnacle. That really helps your mental health, and making sure that you're selfish and taking time. And there's nothing wrong with being selfish, especially if it protects you and it protects your mind and it protects your mental space. Yeah.
Amazing. I think that's been so helpful. I think, and I hope, and people watching and listening will feel quite inspired by your story. And that seems to be what happens wherever you go, is that because even just someone, whether it's just on the start of their tech journey or on the start of their neurodivergent awareness journey, having someone who's been through a certain part of that, even though some of it's been quite recent for you, you're sharing your learning and sharing the fact that, yes, you are allowed to have accommodations. Something you said that I really recognize in my own mind and experiences. Your brain is the way it is. I have to tell myself that a lot, and I've learned how to be more compassionate and kind to myself as well. And I want that for everybody, really.
Oh, definitely. I think that people kind of frown upon like talking to yourself, and I think that there's levels to this, but I like talking to myself, because I have to. If my brain already sounds like a busy coffee shop, I'm not going to hear myself think by talking in my head and keeping my mouth shut. I need to hear myself speak.
Yeah.
So if I need to talk to myself and say out loud, it's okay, I'm going to say out loud that it's okay. And I have to say that because I need to hear myself say it.
Yeah.
Some people may not be comfortable with that. Write it down. Even if you're writing it over and over and over again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it in order. Just grab a piece of paper and just write it down.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to kind of teach myself that, you know, especially when you have ADHD, the likelihood of perfectionist tendencies are also high. It's very common with us. So I think that I've had to I'm slowly trying to unlearn the perfectionist in me. I think also growing up as an eldest daughter as well, like really not trying to, it's really difficult to unlearn that as well. But I think that talking to myself and speaking to myself has really done so much work for me.
Yeah.
And has really helped me in not comparing myself to other people when it comes to my journey, because my journey is very different to the journey of others, whether it be their coming out journey, how they got into tech, how they got diagnosed, whatever it might be. It's going to be different. It might resonate with some people, but it's going to be different. My story is different to others, but it's my story. And I can't compare that to other people. I don't know their journey. And I will never know their journey. And in some cases, what they share may not be the entire truth. It may be even more detail that they haven't shared. How would I know that? So I can't compare myself to that, because you can't compare yourself with what people choose to share and what they choose to not share. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
So yeah, just prioritize you.
Yeah. And on that note of talking out loud to yourself, there's something really powerful in that. And sometimes it's good enough just to kind of say it internally or write it down. But there is a part of your kind of nervous system that is listening for how we already have usually quite a critical inner voice. So if we can counteract that with a compassionate, kind voice that is out loud saying, it is okay, you are okay, it is going to be okay. It's almost like every cell in your body and your nervous system is waiting to hear that, to just relax and just, lean into it rather than be so driven or told off by the critical voice we have.
Oh yeah, definitely. It helps so much. And I used to be that person and be like, oh my gosh, like everyone's always saying to journal, to say your affirmations. It sounds so cheesy, like, and cringy. I'm like, oh, you guys are all doing it because it's a trend. But I will say that kind of talking to myself has actually done so much work for me as a person in many ways. And I think that and I honestly believe that really helped me to get to the point where I find power in rest. Yeah. And I found my purpose in advocacy and making an impact. I found my joy in that as well. But getting to a point where I can actually say I find my power in rest is such a powerful thing for me. But talking to myself has really allowed me to get there. Yeah. So I encourage everyone to talk to themselves. Like even if it's just a little whisper, do it. Yeah. Sometimes I want to go for a walk. So I will talk to myself when I'm out for a walk. But what I will do is I pretend I'm talking on the phone. I'm not really on the phone, I'm just talking to myself. But no one needs to know that. I just have my phone on silent so my phone doesn't ring and I'm not out here looking crazy. And refuse the secondhand embarrassment of the fact that everyone will now know that I was pretending to talk on the phone. But I put my phone on silent or do not disturb and I just talk on the phone, but I'm really just talking to myself, and I go for a walk. And honestly, it's the best therapy that I've ever had.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I could talk to you all day. I still feel like there's so much that we could explore. But we probably should end it there because time and everything. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. Thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself and your story. It's so inspiring, and I'm really grateful that you were able to do it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and if you really want to help me out, I would love it if you could leave me a review and share my podcast with friends who you think would also enjoy it. This podcast was produced by Lexi at Digital Hero, and the music was created by Charlie at Walters Music Productions.